Welcome to today's episode of Sassy Detectives. We're your hosts, Tori
and Rae.
We're here to talk about anything and everything Nancy Drew, and today we'll be talking about Nancy Drew Diaries, book number 20, The Vanishing Statue. Roll the intro. Okay.
Yay! So this is kind of a special episode because it's our first request.
Yes.
And it was requested by Indy from Her Interactive. So shout out to
Indy. Thank you.
Love you.
Had you read any of the Diaries books before?
Oh yeah, I've read a lot of them. I
Okay.
actually own quite a few of them too. I'm also reading through a different one at the same time as I read this one. I think it's like The Haunting of Heliotrope Lane or something. Haunting on Heliotrope Lane. That's the one I'm reading through right now.
I think this might be my first Diaries book.
Oh!
Yeah.
Well, they're good. They're pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I liked the kind of updatedness of it. I like it better than like there's like a classic series. Everybody knows the classic series, and then I guess the first like updated series was probably like the Nancy Drew Files, and I feel like a lot of those are like almost too melodramatic in some ways. Yeah. But I think this might be my first Nancy Drew Diaries book, and I enjoyed it.
The Files are like so 1980s drama soap opera, you know, like teenage soap opera, and I do love that about them. But I do feel like quality wise, out of like all the like updated versions, like I think this series is the best because I've actually liked a lot of these ones more than just like for having Nancy. Like the first two books in the Nancy Drew Diaries series are connected. Like they are basically a part one and part two. The rest of them are standalone, but the first two are kind of connected.
Okay.
And it's like an actually good mystery, and I really like it. And then like a lot of them are still like really good mysteries and stuff. I think, yeah. Aside from these ones, the one that I'm reading right now and the one that we just read, I've read up to number 10 and also the Christmas one. So I've now read 12 of these books now. So yeah, they're pretty fun.
I know I own another one, but I haven't yet read it. There's another one. There's one in the series that I know takes place in Charleston, and I bought that one.
There's always one in Charleston.
Yeah, I think it's like the 13th one. It's like Gray Fox Inn, something about Gray Fox Inn.
I've got it. Yes, Ghost of Gray Fox Inn.
Yeah, so I own that book, but I have not yet read it.
Ooh, mayhaps. We should probably do that for another episode. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Wonder if any of them take place smack dab in the middle of Washington, in the middle of nowhere. Probably not, because there's not many mysteries here, because there's literally nothing.
So should I have the book with me, like a physical copy? Should I go ahead and walk us through?
Yeah.
Okay. Excuse me, I had to clear my throat. So it starts out with Nancy's diary entry, which I think is really cool and kind of feels reminiscent of the games. So I don't know which came first, whether the games came first or the diary series started first, but I liked the book starting with the diary. What?
The diaries came far after. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if it was meant to be reminiscent of the games, but I really liked the whole letter or diary entry kind of starting.
Yeah.
So basically Nancy's talking about how there's a new art gallery opening in East River Heights, and she's really hoping that a lot of the like visitors that are coming for it stay, because she is hoping that more artsy types just kind of integrate into River Heights. She talks about like she and George like watched somebody spray paint a golden dragon onto the side of a store. I'm like, so then it starts out with chapter 1, and basically it starts out with Nancy being called at 8 a.m. on a Saturday by Bess, which is diabolical, if you ask me. And Bess is like, hey, check your mailbox. And Nancy's like, the mail doesn't run this early. And she's like, no, you have to. There's something cool in it. So Nancy runs outside and she sees a invitation to a celebration of the arts at the Strickland mansion, who the Stricklands are like a really rich family, but the lady of the house, she's been a widow for a while, and she kind of like pulled away from any sort of like social settings when her husband died. And so she's really mysterious and nobody really knows anything about her except for that she was really big into art, and they're obviously well off because they live in a mansion. So they're Bess and Nancy are kind of talking about this event, and Bess mentions that she is going to go with this guy named Sven, who... Sven is a very strange character. I'll talk about him a little bit more, but he was like a cute TA or something, according to Bess, in a sculpture class that she had taken at some point, which I looked up how old like Nancy, Bess, and George are supposed to be in this series, and some things were saying 16 and some were saying 18, so I'm just going to guess somewhere around there.
They're around 18, I think, because they're not in school.
Okay, so 18 makes sense.
School, they're doing a lot of like traveling and stuff, which usually teenagers in high school don't do. But yeah, so there's that. And Ned also works for Carson.
Yeah.
So, and like around the same age as the other two. So I'm like, they're probably like late teens, early 20s.
Yeah. So it makes sense. And then Nancy goes down for breakfast, and turns out Hannah has also gotten an invitation, which I love that Hannah has been included into the plot of this story.
I love it. We don't often see Hannah just like at all, let alone like actually included in things. So
so I love that they included her, because Hannah deserves to have a night out on the town too.
She does.
Then she goes in and brings her dad's invitation to him, and she finds out that he's working really hard on a case and he's not going to be able to attend the event. And so Nancy's like, oh, okay, well that's lame. But then they end up talking a little bit about the Stricklands and how her dad had gone to the Strickland mansion like one time before, and the one thing that he really remembered about the mansion was that there are these two like portraits of these young children, and he said that the children just looked really sad, and he thought it was really peculiar. But he has never seen them since or whatever. And then Nancy's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go. Too bad you can't go. And she calls Ned basically to ask the same thing, if he's gonna go to the event. Turns out that Ned has to work with Carson, so he's not going to go to the event either. So Nancy's like, oh, well, that's lame. Well, I guess I'm just going to ask George to go with me. And so Ned's like, oh, okay. So that they kind of hang up, and it's Nancy just kind of talking about, I guess that's like the whole chapter 1 is really just Nancy like making plans to go to this big event. So then in chapter 2, Nancy and Bess go to the gallery to kind of see that event or whatever, and there's supposed to be like a special performance by this two artist duo thing called the Goddess Collective, and then Sven, the guy that Bess is going to this party with, had apparently told Bess to come to his studio before the gallery opening because he was going to give Bess a sneak peek at his like new piece or whatever. And then I think it's funny that Nancy talks about how George was also invited, but she just did not give a flip about Sven.
Yeah,
so she just doesn't go, which I find really funny.
She's so real for that though.
Yeah. And then Sven is kind of this gangly, pale, thin guy with intense gray eyes and a shock of white blonde hair. So already kind of a mental picture there. But then Nancy goes on to describe him. He always dressed in colorful leotards and refused to walk normally. Some days he only skipped, other days he walked on tiptoes or backwards, bumping into people, and he did not say goodbye to anyone. He preferred to simply disappear, catapulting out of sight the minute that you were distracted. So this is the kind of character that apparently Bess's crush of the week is. And I'm thinking to myself, girl.
Yeah. Girl.
Okay. So anyway, they show up and Sven is not, they don't see Sven in the studio, but they see all these like weird TV sets, like kind of set up to look like a person almost. Like there's like legs and arms of TVs and then like a big TV where the head would be. And then it turns out that these are all it's a sculpture that Sven is inside of. So he is the TV creature man or whatever. So he kind of jumps out of this like pyramid person thing, and Bess is just enamored because okay. I kind of feel like Book Sven here is like the Shattered Medallion Sunny June. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of just like, Bess, like, there's probably a smoother dude you could find here, but okay.
I mean, Sunny would even be better, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Sunny is maybe maybe better. Okay, I will concede to that. But then, Nancy kind of doesn't get it, and Sven sort of like kind of talks down at her about it or whatever.
Yeah.
Sven is, I noticed, and Sven, this is a running theme in this book, Sven is kind of rude throughout this whole book.
Yeah. He's kind of a jerk, but like at the same time, he's kind of iconic.
Yeah, like he's certainly entertaining. This is true.
And like, I can't be mad at him,
Except right now, just be like, he throws Nancy into his art.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
true. Most of the time, I can't be mad at him because he's so, like... He's a lot. I'll just say that.
Speak for yourself, because I'm usually annoyed at him in this book. So anyway, he throws Nancy into his art. It kind of falls to shambles, so then they're putting it back together, and Nancy's only helping because Beth pretty much asked her to. And then they go into the event thing, and they're talking about or Sven mentions a person named Mona Pearl Strickland, and she's the Duchess's granddaughter, which the Duchess is the widow of the Strickland mansion. Mm-hmm. And he kind of talks about how she was like a prodigy and she was just like good at pretty much anything that she could do. And
also, is it just me or like, because her name is Mona Pearl, I kept thinking of Mona Lisa from Parks and Rec.
From Mona Lisa from what? Parks and Rec. Yes.
Yeah.
Money, please. Yes.
Money, please.
Parks and Rec is my favorite show.
Taste. Like, okay, I know we've talked about Parks and Rec so much, like, not on the podcast, but,
yeah,
like, to each other. But, like, every time I'm like, oh my gosh, girl, you are so right. It is such an amazing show. You have such a good opinion on it.
Yeah, it's so good.
Anyway, yeah. So I was kind of imagining her as Mona Lisa.
That's fair. That's totally fair. So they're so Sven's talking about Mona Pearl, and then he talks about like one day he like went to her house and there was like a fiasco with finger sandwiches having cilantro or whatever, and he was trying to sneak around the mansion without permission, and they got mad at him and asked him to leave, which I think is totally valid. And then ever since then they're just like not friends, Sven and Mona Pearl or whatever. But he does mention how the two paintings that Carson had mentioned are painted by a very mysterious artist called D. Shamas or Shamus, or, I'm not really sure how you're supposed to say it, but I read it as Shamas as I was reading it, but
I think it's pronounced D. Shamus.
Shamus? Okay.
Yeah, because that's how they were pronouncing it in the audiobook, so it's D.
Okay,
Shamus.
Shamus. D. Shamus.
Yeah. Because I also listening to the audiobook version, so I
Okay.
can pronounce things. Can't read them, can't spell them,
Fair.
but I can pronounce them.
And then Sven kind of just goes on this rant about, like, it's vain for the old lady to call herself a duchess because she's not noble, and she needs to be exposed. And he just kind of has hot takes like that throughout the whole book about art and art collectors and art museums and those sorts of things. So he kind of talks about like how he's gonna like make a scene or make a speech or whatever at the event. And anyway, so they go into the event, and let's see, they meet up with George there, and then there is another cute boy in a green cape that Bess notices, and that becomes important. That's why I'm bringing it up. But yeah, anyway, he's there. And then the beginning of the Goddess Collective performance starts, and there are these people with wooden flutes, and they're playing music, and then there is these two dancers that come out, and one of the dancers' faces is visible, and the other one wears this mask, and they're dancing around, and the girl whose face is exposed, her name is Diana, Sven tells them. And then we're not sure who the other dancer is at this point. And they're doing this like interpretive dance, and they're kind of like shimmying around, and then the masked dancer says that something terrible has happened to their grandmother, and that morning her home was burglarized and a statue was stolen. And then Sven reveals that the masked dancer is Mona Pearl, who is the Duchess's granddaughter that he talked about earlier. And then there's also like another lady there who's looking like super concerned and imposing, and that's supposedly Angelica Velvet, who is the owner of the gallery, which, what a name. Angelica Velvet.
I know, I love it. The names in this book are so great.
They are very good.
You know?
Mm-hmm. So then they're kind of and then Mona Pearl is talking about how, they're going to take the missing statue of Diana that was taken, and they're going to turn her into a new creation. And she reveals the curtain. She opens the curtain, and the pedestal is empty. So that's like the first, big crazy thing to happen in the mystery. So then basically the performance gets shut down because there's not a statue to finish with or whatever. And there's a big to-do, and Angelica Velvet is kind of like, oh, that's, really embarrassing for them. Like, I gave them this spot to perform, and like all of this is happening now, and like that's really lame. But then everybody disperses, and Nancy's like, all right, well, I'm going to start investigating, and she's looking around. Now, I'm actually going to point out something in this chapter that, to me, something in another chapter later contradicts this. So I'm bringing this up, even though it may not sound important right away. So in this point, George says she's going to meet Nancy back at her house because they're all going to have dinner together because Hannah's making dinner. And George says right before leaving, I'll call your house. If Hannah needs anything, I can stop at the grocery store on my way over. Just bookmark that, because something later is going to contradict this, okay? Bookmark it. All right, so anyway.
Whoa.
So, huh?
No, I was just like, ooh.
Yeah, okay.
I'm hyping you up, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the hype. So then the police show up, and there's two officers. So there's a lady officer named Officer Gutierrez, and then apparently she knows Nancy because all the officers know Nancy, obviously. And then
she is taking their jobs away. So
yeah, and then there's Officer Burgermutt, which I find a really funny name. Also, he's described to look like how I picture Ned in my head, a sandy-haired man with the build of a college football player and a face like a golden retriever. So.
Oh, see, I've always just imagined Ned like how he is in the games even
Oh,
before
okay. When I was
I
growing
played
up,
the games.
I was growing up, I always pictured Ned to be more blonde. But
Ah.
yeah. So anyway, so they're talking about things, and Mona Pearl is like, can you please look for this? Like, I didn't take it, but they're kind of like, hey, well, you admitted to taking it from your grandma's house, so like, you know, your motive here is already a little weird. So but Mona Pearl's like, just, please, you know, please investigate. And she shows them oh yeah, there was a note that's like a piece of paper with red ink that said fake art that was left on top of the empty pedestal. I forgot to mention that, but yeah. So then they're kind of talking about how nobody contacted them from the Strickland mansion. So they reached out, and apparently there was no like alarms triggered or anything this morning. So they're just really not sure how it even left the Strickland mansion to get here. And obviously they're not sure what happens now. So they're kind of, it's really just a lot of like, this chapter is just a lot of Nancy like eavesdropping on a lot of things that's going on. And then Sven is kind of like talking about how the Stricklands are always a scandal and blah, 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 and just talking down about people again. Another reason I don't like him. And Bess is kind of like, okay, I'm leaving. And then Sven is like, remember rehearsal at 3, because Bess promised to help him with a performance thing for the big party that's coming up at the Strickland mansion. Which Nancy's kind of like, I don't know why you're doing that, but okay, sure. So Bess is like involved in his thing. So then we get into the parking lot, right? And the cute boy in the green cape that Bess saw earlier is hanging out with Diana, who was the unmasked dancer of the little collective. And they're kind of talking, and so Bess and Nancy are like, okay, we're gonna eavesdrop. We're gonna do some more eavesdropping. So they're kind of talking about the Duchess having secrets and Mona Pearl having secrets, and Diana's asking if they think the Shamas, how did you say it? Shamus?
I'm thinking again. It doesn't even sound like a real. I think it's D. Shamus.
Shamus. I keep trying to remember.
Get it? Like, let me see if I can like find it in the audiobook. Cause wait, did I return the audiobook? Did I return it? No, I don't know. Because if I return it, I'm not gonna get back. I got it through Hoopla, which everybody, by the way, if your library has Overdrive / Hoopla or Libby, get that and listen to audiobooks and read ebooks because it's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, I still have it. Okay, let me see if I can get to it. Yeah, D. Shamus.
Shamus. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I had to...
No, it's okay.
I needed to know how we pronounce it properly, because otherwise we're going to spend like 5 minutes every time we have to say the name. So, D. Shamus.
D. Shamus.
D.
Okay.
Shamus.
So, Nancy is and Bess are listening, and then Nancy decides to speak up, and she's like, hey, do you happen to know what time it is? I don't want to be late for dinner. And the boy answers, and she kind of takes that opportunity to say that she was sorry about the performance toward Diana, but Diana's being a little grumpy toward them. And then the boy, he kind of talks a little bit more friendly, and Nancy takes the opportunity to kind of ask some probing questions, finds out his name is Zeke. He's a painter and poet, and they're going to the party at the Strickland mansion. Huh?
No, just knowing what comes next.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I literally actually posted this question as a status update in my Goodreads when I was reading this, because I was like, huh?
I responded to it.
Yeah, I know. I saw it.
It's wild.
So he's like, who's the fine lady you brought with you? And so Nancy introduces Bess, and Bess immediately asks if Diana is his date. And I'm like, oh, okay, bold. But Zeke explains that they are going together, but it's as friends. And then she's like, oh, so you're a poet. Would you write me a poem? And then he's like, okay, I will, but you have to promise not to read it. And Bess is like, I promise. So then they have this like moment where they look into each other's eyes, and then he writes a poem on a piece of paper, and then I kid you not, this is what happens next. It's very weird, okay? Track with me here, because I had to read it twice to make sure I wasn't confused. So he writes down a poem, and then he tears off the page, and he crumples it up into a tiny ball, as tiny as he can make it. And then he says, open your mouth. And so Bess does. And he puts the paper on her tongue and says, swallow. And Bess does. Bess just ate paper for a boy she doesn't know.
No
because
hesitation.
Of this weird,
just down the gullet.
Weird flirty poem situation. I'm sorry, but I think if the most beautiful man in the whole world made me swallow paper, I'd be like, sir, no.
Yeah.
Like, what?
I'd be like, what? Pardon?
Yeah, I'd be like, are you okay right now?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was a really weird thing. And I literally updated my Goodreads while I was reading this. I was like, hold up, did Bess just eat paper? Because I was like, I've never read anything like that. That felt like that felt like straight out of Wattpad. I don't know. AO3 called and they'd like their sentence back. It was very, I just don't know.
There's not enough italics in this book to be AO3. Sorry.
This is like those weird fanfics rolling around Tumblr. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh wait, were you referencing the?
I'm on Nancy Drew Tumblr. I see the weird stuff going on. That's all I'm gonna say.
It's crazy right now.
It's just weird.
Yeah. Anyway, but I just found my my comment that I left read status, which is where you were like, what the heck did Bess just eat paper? And I said, me on road trips when I'm concentrating on driving while trying to eat my Wendy's burger and I accidentally eat the wrapper. Because, like, I've eaten so much paper on road trips because I'm trying to, drive safely while also trying not to die of starvation. So, yeah.
Yep. So anyway, now Nancy and Bess go home after Bess has eaten the paper because they're going to go eat dinner, which I don't know. How's Bess going to fit dinner when she has a stomach full of paper? But
it was just a little thing of paper, but honestly, like...
The stomach has eyes, paper. Zeke said. Anyway, so they're talking about the event. And then Nancy officially asks George to go as kind of like her date to the event, and they're like, cool. So they kind of talk about that. And then this is okay. Remember the thing I asked you to bookmark where George said, I'll call Hannah, and if she needs anything, I'll pick it up on my way over. So now in this chapter, I'm quoting George here. I'm sure we'll see him at the party. We're talking about Zeke. You can ask him then, said George. By the way, Nancy, what time are you picking me up on Saturday? Remember, Mom won't let me drive. Not since the scooter incident. So, what? Did George walk to Nancy's house and also offer to pick up groceries and carry groceries on a walk to Nancy's house? Or did she drive?
There.
Because
she pogo-sticked there, yeah.
Because doesn't that seem like a little bit... I don't know. Doesn't that seem like it contradicts?
Yeah, it's probably something that wasn't caught in editing and just got left in there.
So, it's not important to the plot really at all, other than the fact that Nancy's going to pick George up for the party. But I immediately was like, huh? When I read that.
Huh?
So anyway, okay, so they're Nancy says she'll pick her up at 6, blah 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 blah. But Nancy is worried about the thief returning. Whoa. The thief returning and doing another heist at the event. Hang on, let me grab my water.
Oh, did it fall, or are you just oh my god.
Okay, sorry, I had to grab my water from across the room. What did you say?
I was like, did it fall, or were you thirsty? But I never actually said thirsty. I just stumbled over my words like a million times. Good for me, I guess.
Cool. Okay, so now I think the next chapter is literally mostly talking about like what people are going to wear. So I'm probably going to skip through it a good bit, although Nancy does go over to George's house and they do some research about like art forgeries, and how some people became famous for doing art forgery, that kind of thing. But it's not super important. It's kind of just like contextual education, I guess, for our characters. So when you're reading the book, it's important, but I don't think it's necessarily really important to recap right here. Nancy's kind of freaking out because she doesn't know what to wear. And then I do want to talk about this. Nancy talks to Hannah and finds out that Hannah is making a hat for her outfit for the event, which it's kind of revealed that Hannah actually was really good at making hats. And it was like a hobby that she picked up. And I like that that was kind of included as part of a plot point as well. And kind of comes into play with Hannah's involvement in going to the party as well. So I think that that was pretty cool. Then chapter 6, Arriving in Style is what it's called. Nancy goes to pick up George and also talks to Bess. I guess they're on a 3-way call. And Bess is being picked up by Sven on his motorcycle. And they have to convince Bess to wear a helmet, which, guys, wear a helmet. Your hair
wear a helmet
is not your hair will look bad if you fall and crush your skull. So don't worry.
Yeah,
it's better that your hair looks bad and your skull is intact.
And also, I have a fear of not wearing a helmet while biking because I played Danger on Deception Island.
That's
as a
totally
child.
fair. Totally fair.
And if you don't wear a bike helmet, you literally die.
Yeah.
So.
And we don't want that to happen to you. So this is our PSA that you should wear helmets when you bike and motorcycle.
Bess never played Danger on Deception Island. Like, that would have fixed her right up, you know?
Bess and George weren't there, so she never learned the lesson.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I mean, neither does Nancy if she wears the helmet.
True.
Because she lives.
True.
You know? Yeah.
Okay, so everybody's dressed up great, and Hannah and Nancy leave, and they go to pick up George, and George is wearing a very nice navy blue tailored tuxedo, which I think is so cute and very George. And
George.
then
I dig that, honestly.
Yeah, and they it's cute too because Nancy notices that she's got a pocket square that matches her dress, like Nancy's dress.
Yeah.
And it turns out that Hannah had like coordinated it with George, which I just think is such a cute thing to do, you know, among friends.
I know, I love that.
And so George also added extra pockets to her outfit like Nancy had, so they're like weighed down with like all these detective things, like a fingerprint light and a magnifying glass and a sketchbook. And I'm like, yeah, at this point Bess and George have done this so many times with Nancy, like they just plan for these things, which I think is so great.
Yeah.
Okay, so they get to the mansion. They also run into Chief McGinnis, and Hannah helps him tie his tie, which is cute. And they go, and they're kind of just looking around at all the people there, and there's all these people, different townspeople, and they're all dressed up, and some of them are dressed kind of casually, or some of them are like really outlandish, or some are just elegant. Like, people are just dressed up however best represents them. And they go through security, and they do take George's pocket knife, which I find funny.
Rip.
and they reach, I think they run into, what's her name?
Diana? Is it Diana or
No,
wait, which one?
Angelica. Angelica Velvet.
Angelica.
Yeah, and she's
Angelica
throwing a fit
Velvet.
because her gold earrings keep setting off the metal detector, which means
Oh
they're
yeah,
not
yeah,
real
yeah,
gold.
yeah.
So they're not real gold. She's a fraud. But don't worry, a lot of people in this book are. Spoilers. So they kind of just watch that happen, and they're kind of running into people. A few different people kind of notice Nancy's outfit, and she's reworked one of her dad's like trench coats to kind of go over her dress, which I think is very Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
And she also finds out from Angelica Velvet that she sold a bunch of art for the Duchess, but she can't really work up a lot of sympathy for Mona Pearl, because she says she's not really impressive, and she thinks that she and Diana are just edgy ballerinas, and that they
Yeah.
don't have anything visionary or original. And so it's just some overall gossip, I guess you could say. So the party kind of started, and Nancy finds George and Hannah again, and they're staring at the blank wall, but there's benches there, so it suggests that something used to hang on the wall, and they speculate it might be the Duchamas portraits that Carson had seen years ago of the kind of
Shamus.
melancholic kids.
Shamus.
Yeah, and they're like the elusive paintings that a lot of people have been hoping to see, and yet they're not on display. And so, and they kind of have a little bit of a, I would say, a philosophical discussion about art. Hannah says things like life changes us and it changes what we see. And so Nancy replies that if all art changed over time, how would we ever know what an artist was trying to say? So like some philosophical stuff that I found pretty interesting to read in what I would consider to still be like a children's or teen novel maybe. But yeah, there's just some art talk with that. And then Beth shows up, and she's wearing like this shimmery cream colored gown, and her hair is all twirled up away, and she's wearing this tiara. And George and Nancy just are like, wow, great, you look great. I think Nancy describes her as looking like a space princess, which is pretty funny. But and then Beth says that she's waiting for Sven, who is meditating in absolute silence for their performance, because, why wouldn't he? And then they head back into the ballroom, the four of them, because Hannah's still with them. And there's desserts, and so they eat desserts, and they
Yum.
spot Diana with Zeke. And then, oh yeah, and then Nancy gets called over by this lady named Susan. I can't remember. Oh, she's the curator of the historical museum, and she introduces Nancy to this man named Lufus Lacroix, I guess is how you say it, or Lacroix. I don't know. How did
Yeah, I
do
don't
you?
remember how. I
Okay, I'm gonna
don't.
say Lacroix. Rufus Lacroix. That's just how I'm gonna say it.
How is it spelled? How is it spelled?
LE space CROUS. Lacroix.
I feel like,
I
yeah.
feel like French words with S's at the
Um,
end normally have them silent, but that might just be my
Le
projected
Cru?
imagination.
Let me see. Le Cru? Crus. Le Crus.
Le Cruz.
Le Crus. We'll just
Le
call him
Cruz.
the American version, which is Le Cruz.
Okay, Le Cruz.
Because,
He's an
yeah.
art collector. Yeah. He's an art collector and critic. And he wrote a piece about the River Heights Museum of Fine Arts for the Times. I assume that meant New York Times, but who knows?
There's
So
a lot
they're
of
talking
different times.
the River Height Times. I don't.
I think it's the Bugle.
Oh, the
Wait,
Bugle.
or at least it's been in the Bugle and other Nancy Drew things. I don't know. I don't know.
So he talks about how he pretty much only came to this event because he wants to see the D. Shamus paintings, and they're nowhere on display. And so he's a little frustrated because he's like, I drove 4 hours for that, and they're not even here. And they should be, because why would she invite like all these people here and not even show off like all the paintings? He says that the Duchess has delusions of persecution and delusions of grandeur, which is kind of a harsh thing to say about a person you don't know, but anyway, so they kind of talk about art a little bit and Shamus, and Lacroix talks about how Shamus was from the American Midwest, painted in the 1990s, only ever made 4 paintings, and every one of those paintings was a masterpiece. Someone had offered, the word was that someone had offered $10 million for the pair, the original pair of paintings, but the anonymous seller refused the offer, and that caught Lacroix's attention. And then the second set of Shamus portraits had ended up in the possession of a certain small town duchess. So that's basically why he's here. So Mr. Lacroix has now has a reason to be here and a reason to snoop and sneak around. Then we meet Leslie Gatewood, and he is the Duchess's personal secretary, and he kind of welcomes everybody. And he says that at 8 o'clock, the Duchess is going to make an announcement. And everybody's like, I wonder what that's about. And then Nancy remembers overhearing Zeke mention the word auction. And so she's like, maybe she's auctioning off her art. I don't really know. So I'm going to move forward a little bit. Oh, then Nancy spots Diana, and she goes past a sign that reads off limits to guests. So Nancy follows her because of course she would. And she's going down this long hallway, and she's noticing a bunch of these shoulder up portraits of different people, and they all look like they could be kind of related. So she's kind of seeing like this man and this teenage girl, and then these 2 small portraits of toddlers, and they all have like similar features, she notices. So she's like, oh, well, maybe this could be the Duchess's family. Like, that would make sense. And then she sees Diana standing with her back to her in this drawing room, and there's bookshelves and tapestries and all this stuff, and there's an empty white pedestal. So this must be where the missing statue used to sit. And Diana's like leaning close over the pedestal, but she's not really touching it. And then Diana disappears out of sight, or drops down out of sight. And Nancy's like, what is she doing? Oh yeah. So Nancy's watching Diana, and then Diana just rears back and punches the pedestal, and a hole breaks in the side, and it crashes on the floor, and nobody comes. And so Nancy's like, what the heck? And she's rummaging through the debris. She's looking for something. And then she snaps this photo and hits, she like taps a message on her tablet, hits send. And then she takes some more photos, and then she grabs something with her left hand and hides it. And then at that point, Diana sees Nancy, and she's like, oh crud, what are you doing? And Nancy's like, well, tell me what's going on. And she's like, no, I'm not going to. And so Nancy accuses her of taking the statue, and she's like, no, I didn't. I love the artist who made it. I wouldn't do that. And then Diana gets kind of upset, and her voice starts trembling, and she runs away. And then Nancy checks her phone, and she's gotten all these missed texts from George, and George is trying to figure out like where she is, and she mentions that she's going to miss the Duchess's announcement. And then Nancy looks in the hole that Diana had punched into the side of this thing, and she sees this like red ribbon with a charm on the end, and it's got a tiny chameleon as a charm, which is an interesting thing to find. Then Oh, and then Nancy hears somebody like fumbling with the door. So she runs over to the door and pretends that she's been locked in. And she's like, help, help, it's locked, let me out. And then somebody opens the door and it's Rufus LaCruz. And he's like surprised, obviously, to see. And he's like, oh, I was looking for the bathroom. And Nancy's like, yeah, okay, fat chance. And it's obvious that he's looking for the Shamus paintings. So anyway, they go back down toward the ballroom, and they're looking kind of at the, Nancy looks again at the portraits on her way, and when they make it to the ballroom, Rufus LaCruz has disappeared again, so she's not really sure where he went. Hang on, I need to drink another thing of water because my mouth is getting dry.
Hydrate or dihydrate, baby!
Mm-hmm. I also really have not drunk as much today as I should have. I just
drink that water.
Forgot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yay, water. Water
Yes.
is great. I need to also drink water. I'm also very dehydrated.
Yes. Hydrate or dihydrate, as you said. So Nancy makes it back, and people are fawning over Hannah's hat, which is so cute. And they're literally like talking about like famous hats and things, which I just think is so fun. So then now the processional starts up and the Duchess is making her entrance. And it's so funny, but the person escorting the Duchess down the stairs to the ballroom throne is none other than George. Which they don't actually really explain in this book. Like, how did George get that job? Was she just in the right place at the right time?
I have no idea. It's George.
Yeah, but I thought it was funny.
I don't know.
So anyway, so they get there, she gets down there, she's just kind of like this frail old lady, so Nancy's like, oh, okay, well, she wasn't quite as grand as, like, Nancy was expecting, but she gets to her little, like, throne thing, and Mr. Gatewood hands her a microphone, and she welcomes everybody, and then she's talking about how, her grandchildren kind of convinced her to let go of her artwork. They donate the collection or sell it off at auction. So basically she says, but instead I'm just giving away my entire collection. And everybody's like, what the heck? That's so weird. Why would you do that? And then at that point, the crowd is kind of like rumbling, and because the collection's priceless and it'd be like a huge loss to River Heights. So Nancy's worried about that. And then right at the beginning of chapter 10, the grand chandelier shuts off and plunges the ballroom into darkness. And, the crowd panics. They're stampeding. George and Nancy are holding onto the door frame as people are pushing back. The Duchess is like, come help me or whatever. Chief McGinnis is like trying to calm people down and corral them around. But it's not really helping. It takes time for everything to kind of calm down. And then at that point, somebody hits a switch and the chandelier comes back to life. And in the middle of the ballroom in her silver gown is Bess. She's holding a red velvet layer cake, on a cake platter above her head. And above her, Sven is dangling from the chandelier in a silver-spangled leotard.
Yep.
This mental image is just something. So Sven bellows, transformation, revolution, and then Bess just does this bit where she eats this heart-shaped cake. And people cheer her on.
Which honestly goes hard,
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine if you were like cast for a performance and that was the only thing you had to do every night was just stand in a fancy gown and eat a heart-shaped red velvet cake?
That would honestly be nice.
Yeah.
Also, Red Velvet mention.
Red Velvet mention.
Dum 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 dum. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Anybody for some Russian roulette? Anyway,
La, 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 la.
also Rookie, great song. Anyway, sorry.
Underrated, okay? It's
Underrated.
fun. I don't care.
Red Velvet's fun. Go listen to Red Velvet. Anyway, so people are cheering Bess on as she's eating this cake, and she finishes the cake, and we're like, okay, cool. And everybody's like, oh wow, Bess, that was amazing. And she's like, I was worried people would think I was gross. And I just thought that was so funny because it reminds me of like people who do like mukbang videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
And how the comments are always so split. The comments are either like, this is the best thing ever, I could watch you all day, or comments are like, ew, this is disgusting and terrible. And so
see, I could never watch those. I hate them.
that's fair. And so I think it's such a
hater.
valid best thing for her to be like, I thought people would think I was gross. I was worried people would think I was gross.
Yeah.
So anyway, so now Mr. Gatewood and the Duchess are both missing. And Sven is bugling, and then he starts reading this long speech about how like art belongs to the people and it shouldn't be held prisoner by criminals and their hostess and blah 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 blah. And he's just going on, and the crowd is starting to get a little bit restless at this point because it's a party and like now it's becoming a lecture.
Yeah, and there's this weird kid just doing stuff and
hanging from the chandelier.
Yeah, and so one of the descriptions in one of the scenes is that he was duck walking.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's like an actual like squatting that's like duck walking, but I kept imagining like the Vogue Femme duck walking that you see on like RuPaul's drag show and everything.
Yeah.
So I kept imagining him doing that the entire time. So he just left a certain image in my brain.
Yeah. So then they basically pull Sven down from the ceiling, and it says he is curled in the fetal position on the ballroom floor, murmuring to himself. Because that's the cool suave look that you want to give at an art party. And then Bess is finally like done. So she like bends down and dumps him, basically.
Yeah, she's like, okay, you're a little too weird for me. Like, cute, but my God.
Yep. And then Chief McGinnis is like, hey, Mr. Gatewood is missing. So is the Duchess. We also need you to keep an eye out for Zeke or Diana and Mona Pearl. Rufus LaCruz, because, he's been kind of sneaking around and blah, 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 blah. And so they're like, okay, great. So everybody, we need to watch everybody. So everybody splits up, and then Nancy's like, I'm going to go check this throne out. So she goes to check out the throne, and she finds out that the throne has like a false seat in it, and it goes down into like a elevator shaft or whatever. So as Nancy's investigating it, then she gets pushed into this throne hole, and she falls, and then she lands on this padded platform, which is like this weird elevator thing. And the way it's described, it kind of makes me think of like the elevator platform that's in like Labyrinth of Lies. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. But with like a padded, like it's padded instead of just being metal. So that's where Nancy falls, but her phone does apparently fall to its death, which is really unfortunate.
Rip.
I know, rip that phone. So then Nancy's like, okay, well, now I can't go back up, so I guess I just got to go through this weird tunnel. So she goes through this tunnel that's lit by candlelight, and she eventually comes to, during this passageway, I guess, she sees all this unfinished artwork. So these canvases that had been like started and never finished, and they usually started in the top right corner and worked down to the left. And she's just like, what is all this abandoned art, and like why is it here, who would pay for this kind of stuff? So eventually she ends at the passage, and there is Mr. Gatewood standing at the top of these stairs in front of this door. And so she calls up to Mr. Gatewood, and she's like, what's going on? And he says, you can't come any closer. The Duchess is in here working. Like you have to let her work. And Nancy's like, like, what do you mean? And so he kind of tells Nancy that that the Duchess is a painter, and that she's asking him about the missing statue, and he talks about how it's not even the Duchess's statue, it was actually Mona Pearl's statue. And then he's like, if you have more questions, you can ask the Duchess, but you got to wait till she's done. And Nancy's like, you know what? Sorry, but I'm gonna go in. She just like busts past him into the room. And then she basically catches the Duchess, and she's painting these updated portraits of her grandchildren. And Nancy discovers them to be obviously Mona Pearl, but also Zeke. So they're siblings. And Nancy realizes that basically this is kind of like the big confrontation. So Nancy realizes that Dee Shamus is the Duchess, and she painted under a different name. And she gives this backstory about her husband had tried all these different business ventures, and some of them just didn't pan out, and they lost money on them. And so they were kept afloat by her doing art. And she didn't mean to start doing this, but she ended up doing art forgeries and selling them off, because people would pay for them. And so that's kind of just like how she kept her family fed, and like them in this house. And she, admits that it was not necessarily moral or ethical for her to copy art like that, and to especially try to pass them off as real ones. But that's kind of like the whole thing. So then that's the whole conversation that kind of comes to light. And then coming into that room a little bit later is Zeke and Diana and Bess and George. And so they kind of talk about, and now there's kind of like this talk between family, and how, she talks about how, and the thing that Diana had found in that pedestal was a ledger book of all of the people who had bought things that the Duchess had created, even the forgeries. And so it had been hidden because the Duchess had, understood that if that information had become public, that her reputation would just be ruined, and that she could potentially have been sued and all of these different things. So it would have just made things really complicated. But like Diana and Zeke had just wanted the truth to come out, and so they had given that ledger to Rufus Lacroix. And so now there's kind of this confrontation between like Zeke and his grandmother, and they come to an understanding that like, but they kind of have this agreement that they're going to come clean. And so they agree to do that, but the missing statue is still a thing. So they get back through the passage, and they go back into the ballroom, and Nancy sees Zeke kind of like sitting around all dejected. So she goes up to talk to him, and she's like, where are you keeping the statue? Like, I've figured out that it's you that took it. And he's like, no, you're just try to figure it out. Like, just try to find it. And then the Duchess comes, and she talks about her announcement. Hang on, there's dancing first.
Oh yeah, there's the dancing where George is speaking in a bad British accent.
Yeah.
Like, all right, my lady, let me take you to the dance floor.
She says, I learned from YouTube videos. I had to practice for hours.
It's supposed to be like a really, really bad accent.
Yeah. It says it was decidedly more chimney sweep than courtly gentleman.
Yeah, I was explicitly thinking of Dick Van Dyke in Mary Poppins, his notoriously terrible Cockney accent.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So then the Duchess gets up to make her next announcement, and then Sven comes roaring in, driving his motorcycle into the mansion with
Bro just needs to take a chill pill.
Yeah. With the statue, the stolen statue, on the handlebars, I guess. Which is very weird, with a metal bow and a real arrow. And he's like, it is I who took your wow. It was I who took your
Where
precious,
it's
worthless statue. I exposed your fakery, which is the fakery of all artists. It's impossible to be original. Come and get me, Nancy Drew.
yes.
And then he leaves. So Nancy and her friends all jump in the car and they follow the tracks to the woods, and then they all get out and they confront him in the woods. And he basically is like, if you come any closer, I'll drop the statue. But instead, Nancy does her wonderfully charming thing where she gets the bad guy to talk about themselves, because bad guys like to talk about themselves, guys. That's one of the...
Yeah. I'll say Nancy in all versions has high speed, but in some versions she has low charisma with the high speech, but she always has high speech, so she can always get people monologuing, you know, which I love about her.
And that's just a classic mystery rule, is if you need
love
time, get the bad guy to talk about themselves. Bad guys love to talk about themselves.
It's either that or force every single one of the suspects into a... You lock them in and then start roasting them like Poirot does, but Nancy just gets them monologuing.
Yep. So basically, what it turns out is Sven took this statue because he wanted to make a name for himself in the art world without the help of his mommy, who is Angelica Velvet, it turns out to be. And then he liked Mona Pearl, but she didn't like him back, so he was mad about that. And then he finally is kind of like, okay, fine, you're right, I'm being a big fat baby about this. And then he allows them to take the statue back. So then they carry it back. And then Mona Pearl reveals herself to Nancy and takes the statue back. And then Mona Pearl and Diana kind of make up because they've been, having a friend fight or whatever. And so everything's cool. Now the Duchess is like, okay, so here's what I'm going to do instead. I'm going to give each of you that are at the party one of my art pieces that I have selected for you. So then she's passing out all of these things. She even gives Hannah like a present, which I think is so cool. And she's giving all the stuff. And then at the very end, she gives Nancy a bunch of brushes and blank canvases. And I thought that was a cute little gift. And then Mona Pearl... What?
I thought that gift sucked, because like the sentimental meaning behind it is great and all, but like imagine you go somewhere to this like super rich lady and she's giving everybody all these priceless works of art, and then she gives you her spare supplies.
Yeah.
She's like, here, paint something of your own.
Yeah. So,
sorry, it's just making me laugh.
Yeah, it is funny. And then the book ends with Mona Pearl thanking Nancy. And then Nancy notices that there is a real chameleon in her hair. Like, oh, okay, Pascal.
Yeah. I know, I thought that too.
So, okay,
I was like, it's tangled.
We got Rapunzel over here. But anyway, so that's the book. I actually really enjoyed it. And even though the plot was not like super crazy or like difficult to follow, I actually thought they did a really good job at like pacing the reveals and kind of at one point making it feel like, how could all of these things be connected, and then tying them all together. I thought it was really nice in that way.
I know, yeah. A lot of the Nancy Drew Diaries books really do hold up. Because a lot of like the Nancy Drew Files and the Girl Detective books, and even like the original mystery stories, like when you reread them like under a more critical lens, you're like, wow, this isn't great. Even though I do love Nancy Drew, this isn't the best mystery. But then like these ones actually, most of them do hold up, where it's like, yeah, this is good actually. So yeah, I like them.
Yeah, I agree.
Really recommend us doing more. So
yeah,
I've got quite a few.
I also really liked a lot of the dialogue, and it felt very like true to character, but also like modern enough. That it, like when you read the classic Nancy Drew stuff, like there's nothing wrong with that dialogue, but it's like you can tell it was written in the 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Yeah.
With this, it's like you can definitely tell that it was written for like a more modern audience, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I thought it was like funny, and there were like the tones and humor had changed a bit and things like that, but nothing ever felt like out of character.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked it. I like the newer adaptations in the Nancy Drew Diaries series because it does feel like a lot more like them. Because sometimes you'll get other moments in other books where it's just like, okay, I don't really get this. But it does feel like this is the 2010s / the 2020s. It, seems realistic for it to happen this way
Yeah.
and stuff. It's like it just feels like a very natural adaptation of them,
Yeah.
which yeah, which I really, really like.
Yeah,
So
I agree with that
yeah.
for sure. I also thought the atmosphere and setting was really fun. I feel like, um, I I know
Put me in a
some people.
mansion, I'm happy.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a cool mansion, and like, I didn't mind that it technically still took place in River Heights because it wasn't like
Yeah.
just Nancy at her house or whatever. It, I
Yeah,
think
quite a
that
few of the Nancy Drew Diaries take place in Heights. So
yeah,
yeah, just warning you on that.
no, I have no problem with that really, as long as it's
At
like
least it's not like that
different
one.
places within River Heights, you know.
Yeah, at least it's not like that one book where that we reviewed where the plot twist was that nothing really happened and then Nancy's car ran out of gas in River
Oh
Heights.
gosh, that book was kind of atrocious.
It was so boring.
Yeah. What was that? False Notes? Yeah. Girl
Yeah, it was False
Detective
Notes.
3.
Sucked.
Yeah.
Sucked very badly.
Yeah. I actually I gave this one 4 stars on Goodreads. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, me too.
So,
Yeah, so that's our rating, I guess. Both of us four
yeah.
stars on Goodreads.
And then I know sometimes if it's applicable, we'll talk about comparison to a game, but this one's not what any of the games are based off of. However,
But
I
like,
do
hey,
think that this would be a good inspiration for a game.
absolutely, yeah. I need more like heist games other than like I know we just had kind of a heist game, but like I need one where you like witness the heist, you
Yeah, that would be
know?
cool.
Like another Secret of the Scarlet Hand thing where the heist is like part of the game or something and it's artsy and there's like a mansion, mysterious old lady. Like I need that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also it's a mansion that has like little secret contraptions and stuff. Like her, look at this book. Oh my gosh. We have like oh my god. That was amazing. Yeah.
I thought it was cool. The art is nice. It's very like cute and intriguing. I like the art style just in general, like the drawing style.
Hmm. Oh yeah, like I love the covers for these. I do feel like it makes the characters look a lot younger on the but I do like the art. I do like the style, yeah. Because when you read it, they are like quite obviously to me at least late teens, early 20s,
Hmm.
but on the cover they look like 13.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. But it's very cute.
It is cute.
All right. Well, that's it. Do you have anything else
Yay!
to talk about before we wrap up?
Um if this does turn out to be a Nancy Drew game, which it should because that would be fun, Sunny would definitely be like some kind of like past intern or something.
Yeah.
Which Sunny would have to have worked at either the art gallery or the mansion. He would have to have done something or like been an assistant of the writer dude at some point.
Yeah. He's Sven's assistant.
So his assistant at one point. Ah! Wait, Sven's really young, so like I don't know. Sunny's done some weird stuff that
True.
yeah, it's Sunny. I don't know. He's a weird guy. There's a reason I named my
He
cat
could
after
just
him.
be at the party.
He could just be at the party and like do something weird. It is very Sunny to go to an art show and do performance art. I feel like he would do performance art just like in general.
You're right.
He seems like the type.
All right. Well, that is it for this episode. A little bit shorter of one. I feel like linear books, we talked about this right before we started recording,
Yeah.
but linear books take less time for us to talk about than like the
Yeah.
confusing non-linear paths that sometimes happen in the games, but
Because there's so many type parts in the games where it's like, oh, do we do this first? Do we do that first? I don't know. this is going all over the place. I never played the game the same way twice. And then there's these where it's like you gotta, it's a plot. It's like right in front of you. So yeah.
So yeah. All right. Well, have a great rest of the day, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another game episode, and I'm actually really excited for this one. It's very springy, so I'm excited to do it in the spring. So we'll see you again soon. Yeah, that's your hint. We'll see you again soon. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.